He never spoke of war, and for decades, his silence was mistaken for weakness. On his 85th birthday, as laughter filled the room and candles flickered against the wrinkles of his face, one question, small, careless, but sharp, pierced the air. "Grandpa," a boy asked, "why did you never fight back when they called you a coward?" The room fell still. Forks froze in midair. The boy's mother gasped, but the words were already loose, heavy, impossible to gather back. The old man, who had lived a life of quietness, lowered his eyes. His hand trembled on the table, not from age but from memory. For the first time in 85 years, he spoke. Everyone in town knew him. A frail figure who walked each morning with his cane, greeting strangers with a nod, but never with stories. He was polite, kind, dependable, yet never once did he speak of the past. The children whispered that he must have been nobody. Adults assumed he had nothing worth sharing. His neighbors, younger and restless, sometimes mocked him. "The quiet coward," they'd say when he was out of earshot, though perhaps they wanted him to hear. And still, he never answered. His silence became a wall so thick, even his children grew up not knowing the man their father once was. But behind that wall was another world, a world only he had seen. He had been a soldier at 19, sent across the ocean to fight in a war that swallowed men whole. He remembered the mud, thick, sucking, never letting boots go. The smell of smoke and iron in the air. The endless pounding of artillery that shook not just the ground, but the soul. He remembered friends, boys his age with crooked smiles and trembling hands. Boys who joked about what they'd do when they got home. Boys who never did. He remembered a night so black he could not see his own hands. Yet he could feel the warmth of another man's blood seeping through his uniform. A friend who whispered his mother's name until his voice was gone. And he remembered the silence after battle. The kind of silence that screamed louder than gunfire. That silence had followed him home. At the table, his grandchildren watched him closely. They had never seen him cry, never seen him angry, never seen him break. He had always been steady, always been a rock. But that question, about being a coward, cracked something inside. Not in anger, but in release. His lips parted, and what came out was not a lecture, not a defense, but a story. "I was 19, he said softly. His voice was dry, gravelly, like stones shifting in a riverbed. "They told us to hold a hill that meant nothing, just dirt, but men died for it." The family leaned in, breath held. "We fought for hours. I carried a man on my back who begged me not to leave him. I carried him through fire, through bullets, through screaming. He died anyway. I never told his family. I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? That their son's last words were about how afraid he was?" His hands trembled as he spoke, yet his eyes were steady. People think courage is about fighting, about shouting, about raising your fists. But I learned courage is carrying a body through mud, knowing you'll break under the weight, but doing it anyway. Courage is holding your tongue when people call you names, because you've already heard worse cries, and they still echo in your head at night. The room was silent. The boy who had asked the question lowered his head, ashamed. But the old man wasn't finished. "After the war, people asked what I had seen. I couldn't tell them. Not because I didn't want to, but because no words could carry the weight. And when I stayed silent, they thought I was weak. But I had carried enough screams. I wasn't going to carry their judgment too." He drew a long breath, his chest rising slowly, as if even air resisted him. "For 85 years, I let them believe I was nothing. I let them spit the word coward under their breath. But let me tell you something. A coward runs from the cries of the dying. I never ran. I stayed. I stayed when the world burned, and I stayed when it went quiet. That silence you see in me, that's not weakness. That's survival." Tears slid down the cheeks of grown men at that table. His children, who had long believed their father an ordinary, unremarkable man, now saw a giant. His grandchildren, who had only known him as a quiet shadow at family gatherings, now saw fire in his silence. And suddenly, All the years of public disrespect, the whispers, the smirks, the assumptions, dissolved in an instant, because the truth was out. And truth, once spoken, has a way of drowning out every lie. The boy, the same one who had asked the piercing question, stood from his chair. Slowly, hesitantly, he placed his small hand on his grandfather's weathered one. "I'm sorry," he whispered. But the old man shook his head. "Don't be sorry. Ask questions. Always ask, because silence keeps pain locked away. And pain only heals when truth is spoken." The family rose one by one, surrounding him in quiet reverence. No one clapped. No one cheered. They simply stood in silence. A silence no longer mistaken for emptiness, but understood as sacred. From that day forward, the old man no longer walked as a shadow in his town. People greeted him not with dismissive nods, but with respect. His silence was no longer mocked. It was honored. He had lived 85 years carrying ghosts, but in speaking, he had set them free. And in that freedom, he taught his family, and all who heard his story, a lesson that would outlive him. That silence may hide pain, but truth heals. So when you see someone who rarely speaks, remember, it may not be weakness. It may be the weight of battles you'll never know. Respect the silence, honor the unseen, and never mistake quietness for cowardice. Wherever you're watching this, share your thoughts below. Tell us what silence has taught you, and if stories like this move you, subscribe for more tales that honor the heroes who live among us, unseen but never forgotten.